Hi guys, welcome back. Back when my case was wrapping up with EEOC, I was concerned that NASA might not pay what EEOC had ordered them to. So I was prepared to go to federal court if I had to. And if I had been forced to do that, I also planned to go public with my story. My attorney was on board with that. Public opinion and the potential for regulatory intervention can hold our employers accountable when we can't. But telling our story in the media is no guarantee that we'll find justice. There are significant legal implications of deciding to go public, so this is an area where I strongly urge you to consult with a good employment attorney before you make that decision. First, I want to hit on expectations. I think most of us believe that because what happened to us was so bad that once we put our story out there, it's going viral. But not every story does. You can use this channel as a point of reference. I've been doing this about 2.5 years. And I have about 3,500 subscribers, which is great as far as I'm concerned, but NASA probably isn't worried. We also need to talk about timing because when we tell our story matters a lot. We definitely want to exhaust the informal process first. Ideally, I think most of us are looking for a settlement that stops the discrimination and saves everybody the cost of a protracted court battle. Now, in settlement, most employers want to, at least in part, buy our silence. And once we talk to the media, that's not on the table anymore. On the other hand, telling our story on the heels of filing a case in federal court can be really impactful because it can put our employers on notice that we're serious about this and we're going to do what it takes to win, so they can plan accordingly. When we can, we want to time it so that we're riding the wave of public opinion. Synergy with a larger social movement can give our stories a boost too, like Me Too did with so many stories of SH and SA. Probably the biggest timing factor, though, is whether we're ready to talk. And here again, I think because most of us believe what happened to us was so bad and we're definitely the victim here, public sentiment is automatically going to be on our side. That's not always what happens. There are a lot of people out there who believe that we protected workers already have too many rights. When people like that hear our stories, they tend to come for us instead of our employers. We have to be prepared for that. My disabilities alone were pretty embarrassing. IBSD, mental illness, it's not stuff you want everybody to know. NASA's allegations of misconduct were also embarrassing for me. And in my particular situation, there was also the poor hygiene that was forced on me. Most people don't want to hear that, no matter who's responsible. And when I decided to tell my story, I put all of that in the public domain. Next, we have to consider what it is we want to say. We have to be able to tell our stories in a compelling, impactful way, in just a few minutes. This is where an elevator speech can be helpful, and actually I think everybody who's fighting an EEOC battle should have one. I made a video about how to do that, and I'll link to it in the description. And we also want to focus on the parts of our story that are going to be most impactful. Often that's the stuff that we'd rather avoid because that's what makes us feel vulnerable. It's also what other people connect with. As an example, when I first told my story on this channel, I didn't share the parts about being forced into poor hygiene. I just shared that what my boss did to me was dehumanizing. But until I came forward and shared exactly how I was dehumanized, a lot of people discounted my story. I'm a white woman with privilege. What could I possibly know about being dehumanized, right? Well, when I shared my whole story, nobody asked me that anymore. We also want to offer up some evidence to lend credibility to our story. And we can't share all the evidence we have with the time constraint, so we want to share the evidence that's most impactful. Like when I submitted my request for reasonable accommodation, and my boss said she wasn't going to act on it until I removed a couple of words that I'd capitalized for emphasis because she said it was disrespectful to her. That email made quite an impression on my AJ at my hearing. How do we go about putting our story out there? This is actually the easy part. We can find reporters, both locally and online, who routinely tell stories about discrimination and other social justice issues and reach out to them with the elevator version of our story. Reporters generally make it fairly easy to contact them because that's how they get news stories. And we can also seek out advocate groups for other victims like us. A lot of them have access to media outlets and other resources that can help us put our story out there. Even with the people who aren't interested in telling our story, we can at least open the lines of communication and make ourselves available for future interviews. Public interest can be fickle, So you never know when your story might be just the one they need. And if the public interest just isn't there at all, we can try to create some for ourselves on social media. Our chances of being heard there are better if we don't lead with self-promotion. If we want our story to resonate with a lot of other people, there has to be an us, not just a me. And we want to be sure that we approach the right people. We'll get further with dedicated groups and online forums than just broadcasting to our friends and family on Facebook, obviously. So those are the tips that I had. In the description, I'm going to link to a story I posted last week under the Community tab about Courtney Robinson, a member here who just went public with her story recently. If you have questions for her, hit her up in the comments or check the description and I'll hook you up with her Instagram. And if you've already gone public with your story, drop a link in the comments so we can check you out too. Maybe even leave us some tips. Going public can hold our employers accountable and get us a fair settlement. But even if it doesn't do that, just telling our story can be really empowering. We just want to be sure that we're doing it in a way that's most likely to help us and least likely to harm us. I'll see you guys in the next one. Till then, take care and hang in. Bye, smart.